Down dog. Start by getting on all fours, hands shoulder width apart, knees under your hips. Since the finished pose is an inverted V shape, you want your hands to be forward of your shoulders, not directly below them. How far ahead is going to depend on your body, but a general rule is a couple of hand lengths. Make sure that you spread your fingers wide and have your hands rooted in the floor. You can either press your full hand and fingers into the floor gently, or you can grip the floor with your fingers, though you should be mindful of making sure that the palm of your hand is also bearing weight. Distributing weight evenly is the key. Take a deep breath, curl your toes under, and start to straighten your legs. Your heels probably will not touch the floor, and that's fine. Mine don't. Be mindful of your neck and head. I like to alternate between letting my head drop and looking up at my hands. Do what feels best. The traditional instruction is to have your feet together. To be honest, for the first several years I practiced, having my feet together felt totally lousy. It felt much better having them apart. So cut yourself a break and move them apart if the urge strikes you. I wouldn't advise moving them wider apart than your hips, because this will stretch an entirely different part of your hamstrings. It's fine to do that, of course, but let's first concentrate on down dog. This pose should look like an inverted V with your tailbone being the highest point. You do not have to straighten your legs all the way if that feels like a strain. Spend several breaths here without exerting yourself. Imagine that you're simply hanging out in an upside down V shape. Drop your head, breathe deep, and relax. Now soften your knees so that you don't feel a stretch in your hamstrings. Imagine that you're pushing the front of the mat away from you. Gently lengthen your arms and move your tailbone higher. You should feel a nice stretch under the arms and down your back. Lower your knees to the floor, sit back on your heels, and come back into child's pose for several breaths. I recommend spacing your knees apart, making a pillow with your hands, and resting your forehead on your hands. You could also make fists with your hands, stacking them one on top of the other and resting your forehead here. When you feel ready to come back into down dog, try to do so as mindfully as you can. Extend one arm in front of you on an inhale, and then the other. Look at your hands. Wrist creases should face forward to protect your wrists. Spread your fingers wide, get grounded. Without moving your hands, come up on your knees, curl your toes under, and make your way into down dog. Be still and see what comes to you. Be open to the possibility that you may want to step your feet apart or move them closer or farther away from your hands. Maybe this pose feels good with your knees bent or up on your toes, or with one leg extended behind you, or bending one knee at a time. In my experience, most students are more comfortable in down dog when they tailor the pose. The instructions I've given you are just general guidelines. They're intended only to familiarize you with the basic shape of the pose. That's not going to feel right for everyone. The point of practicing this pose is to be open to the possibility that there's another way for you to do this that's more appropriate for you. Open your mind and let your guidance flow in, then follow it. If you're very new to yoga or having trouble with this concept, then I would recommend fiddling around with it. Just start moving things around slowly and try to be as aware as you can be of what you're doing and not doing. It's not uncommon for beginning students or those who've been practicing a more rigid type of yoga to need practice exercising their options and being open to doing this in a less traditional way. So do that and don't worry, you'll understand the idea with time and patience.